everything I do on saying that we need to give everyone an absolute fair chance. And therefore, my first point that I want to raise on behalf of the citizens of this province, the Western Cape, that we need to make sure we get our fair share. Mr. President, we know that this province is currently the fastest growing province in South Africa. We heard that at the Lekgotla from the Statistician General. We know that we are now the province with the third most citizens, the third largest population in our country. But Mr. President, we get the fifth most budget. We need to make sure, and I will fight for our fair share of the budget in this province. Mr. President, but I will also work with the province of Gauteng and the province of KwaZulu-Natal, because they also need to make sure they get the fair share of budget, because we are fast growing, and I promise you it is education, it is health that feel the brunt, because we have more and more learners and more patients in our hospitals. But Mr. President, I really do welcome the call yesterday. I welcome this Government of National Unity's positioning that we feel around a massive disaster. As I speak, and as we walked out for lunch, it was pouring with rain still in this province. We have had more than a week of solid rain, devastating weather, more than 200,000 citizens in this province displaced because of this weather incident that has now been declared a disaster. More than 44,000 structures damaged and destroyed. Many roads. As I stand here, more than 70 roads still underwater. But Mr. President, it is about disasters. And I must say to Minister Schlabise, to the Deputy Minister, to the way that you reacted to this disaster, there's a new feeling behind this Government of National Unity, Mr. President. On Friday, we wrote to the Minister saying this needs a declaration of disaster. On Friday, we got an answer to say yes. On Monday, the Minister and the Deputy Minister came to visit. I want to say thank you very much. There's a new feeling to build a new and better country. But Mr. President, we will still fight in policing. Minister Mchunu, thank you very much for coming to visit us tomorrow, to come to listen, because our citizens feel gangsterism and crime every day. I am still going to work with you, but I'm going to fight for more devolution of power. I do believe it's the right thing to do, and I believe we will base it on data and evidence. And together, we will come up with solutions that will make it safer for the citizens in our province. Mr. President, I will support you on infrastructure, because if we don't have infrastructure enabling the growth and economic growth of our province and our country, we will not be able to deliver what we need to deliver. And that is electrical infrastructure, road infrastructure.
Honourable Premier, your time has expired.
Do I not get a closing comment, Madam Deputy Speaker?
Sorry, no.
I can't even do what was done before lunch. I hereby commit the Western Cape to building a better South Africa, to supporting the Government of National Unity, but we will make sure that this province gets its fair share while we are playing our fair part. Thank you very much.
I now call on Honourable the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, Presiding Officers of Parliament, President and Deputy President of the Republic, members of the National Executive, members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Quite clearly, our country is standing at a crossroads. On the one hand, we face a tipping point if we maintain the status quo, responsible for South Africa not realizing its full potential. On the other hand, we can positively disrupt the status quo with pragmatic interventions that yield positive outcomes. As the DTIC Group, our decision is clear in working to support and enhance the programs instructively outlined by the President in his speech last night. This is important, especially if we calculate the costs of poverty, which constitute 60% of the national budget. The reality is that we have to adopt a mission-oriented approach to industrial policy and strategy as articulated by Mariana Mazzucato. As Mazzucato argues, such a strategy is about co-creating markets instead of fixing markets and designing reciprocal partnerships around shared goals that produce shared value. She further argues that it requires a view of the state not just as a market fixer, but rather as a market shaper. As such, we must implement with laser focus the program of priorities outlined in the GNU to benefit all South Africans, most particularly the women, the youth, and people with disabilities. If we do not implement programmatic priorities of social justice, redress, and poverty alleviation, then our nation building and social cohesion projects will remain an elusive ideal. In line with what was said by the President when talking about smart industrial policy, the DTIC Group will implement sectoral plans building on the successes recorded in the automotive, clothing and textile, retail, and agro-processing sectors. Every year, the South African economy spends 25% of the national wealth created on imported goods. Not only is this propensity to import much greater than our competitor countries, it is also out of sync with our development needs. We will reverse this in pharmaceutical and medical devices, green industries, food products, and manufactured goods, amongst others. Smart industrial policies and programs are being implemented to respond to the global market trends towards electric vehicles. As you know, in February this year, the Minister of Finance announced that the government will introduce an investment allowance for new investments. This will see producers having the opportunity to claim 150% of qualifying investment expenditure on electric and hydro-powered vehicles within the initial year. Our structural transformation relating to BBBEE, the DTIC Group will use the public procurement regime to advance BBBEE and SMMEs. We will work with the National Treasury to ensure that the procurement bill under consideration by the President will be implemented. We're also aware that enterprise and supplier development elements of the codes have the potential to raise several billions from the private sector. Therefore, working very closely with the Commission in monitoring the contributions on enterprise and supplier development, Black industrialists and SMMEs will benefit from such financial contributions. The existential fact for South Africa is that transformation and redress are the precondition and rational basis for unity, for the unity of South African people as a whole. Our common prosperity is contingent on building a better life for all and not for some. In line with what the President said, the DTIC Group will refocus on industrialization in a targeted manner using available policy instruments. This through aggregating industrial financing to recapitalize the NEF, through utilizing equity equivalent measures directed at financing plus enterprise and supplier development initiatives, and through refocusing the IDC on industrialization-focused investments. Obviously, partnering is a critical component of our smart industrial programs. The private sector is an invaluable partner in financing and driving inclusive economic growth and enhancing our export capabilities through, for example, our Export Credit Insurance Corporation. Furthermore, we are placing focus on regional industrial development. Our message to our SADC partners is a call to action for a united effort to promote regional industrialization. This will leverage South Africa's trade with Africa, which has increased significantly, growing from just over 343 billion rand in 2019 to just under 547 billion in 2023. This is what is meant by inclusive economic diplomacy. Hence, South Africa has already launched preferential trade under the AfCFTA, with 12 products being traded in the continent since January this year. The AfCFTA is a game-changing initiative to leverage one of the fastest-growing consumer markets in the world, a growing market that is young, tech-savvy, highly educated, and conscientious about implementing actionable Pan-Africanism for the 21st century. With approximately 450 billion rand in potential income gains from the AfCFTA, a significant portion will arise from improved trade facilitation measures that reduce red tape and simplify customs procedures. As I conclude, let us be mindful of the hazards of climate change, which has real negative consequences, as witnessed here in the Western Cape, in the Eastern Cape, and in KZN. Whilst acting to contribute to concerted climate action, we continue to advocate for the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in line of national circumstances. This is important in the context of trade, where countries in the global north introduce trade measures under the guise of climate action. Thank you very much.
I now invite the Honourable Thring.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Mr. President, on behalf of the ACDP President, Reverend Dr. Kenneth Meshwe, and our ACDP leadership, I wish to state again that the ACDP is not a part of the GNU for reasons that we have made clear. What the ACDP will do is to fulfill its constitutional mandate of holding the executive to account. It is a role that we take seriously and one that we will not shy away from. We do wish the members of the GNU well, for we most certainly, as the ACDP, do not wish to see South Africa becoming a failed state. The ACDP agrees, Mr. President, that we have a responsibility for each other, and our well-being cannot be separated from that of our fellow South Africans. This is a responsibility that we as politicians, and indeed you, Mr. President, cannot renege on, for we are our brother's keeper. The first two GNU priorities of driving inclusive growth and job creation, and secondly, reducing poverty and tackling the high cost of living, is going to be a mammoth task. Why? Because we are currently facing a fiscal crisis. We have a debt to GDP of some 74%, a budget deficit of over 300 billion, which will be added to the already accumulated debt of over 5 trillion. Our debt service costs are crowding out key service delivery programs from our different departments. We have a shrinking tax base where 3 million taxpayers contribute 95% of government revenue. We have one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. Budgets in most departments have been spoken of over so many years has now become so long that it is strangling SMMEs and economic growth. This, Mr. President, has happened under your watch. adding five more years to your 9 wasted years. So what budget cuts mean is that for the next financial year, service delivery will be impeded. Your third priority of building a capable and ethical and developmental state points to a current incapable state, incapable of carrying out programs set in our department's APPs, incapable of carrying out effective service delivery, evidenced by all of the service delivery protests across the country, incapable of protecting our communities, evidenced by our high crime rate and drug-infested communities where policemen and women are on the take. Additionally, underscored by a murder rate of 70 people per day and over 130 women that are raped in South Africa every day. And so when we speak of building a capable, ethical, developmental state, it is against this backdrop that it has to be created. Mr. President, our President, Dr. Meshwe, warned you about inviting the judgment of God upon yourself and your party regarding the hypocritical international position taken on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Let this be your second warning. The ACGP agrees with the economic growth that is inclusive and transformational. We disagree on the how paradigm and have stated multiple times that race-based policies are a hindrance to structural reform and economic growth. The ACGP has an unselfish love and commitment to the people of South Africa. We strive and will continue to strive to use our skills, talents, and resources to enhance South Africa's competitive and comparative advantages and leverage on our economies of scale so as to grow our industrial base and reduce unemployment. This is the commitment of the ACGP to South Africa. Thank you.
I now invite the Honourable Breitenbach to the podium.
Madam Deputy Speaker, honourable members, as a matter of legal history, it is broadly accepted that there were two primary evils in the apartheid legal order: parliamentary supremacy and strict legal positivism. Parliamentary supremacy, in simple terms, meant that Parliament could pass laws in an unconstrained manner, and those who applied the law were to give effect to these laws, irrespective of whether they believed it to be right or wrong. In this regard, former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke pointed out that, and I quote, "Under apartheid, Parliament enjoyed supremacy, and no constitutional Bill of Rights provided any fetter on its legislative powers. Oppressive laws passed by Parliament could, for the most part, not be challenged by the courts. The apartheid regime was sustained by a lack of accountability and the construct of parliamentary sovereignty. At the time when the South African Parliament enjoyed parliamentary sovereignty, the appellate division and the judiciary more generally was a weak check on Parliament's powers. Parliament essentially enjoyed a monopoly on power." Close quote. Other academic legal scholars have also analysed the damage caused by the system of parliamentary supremacy and the related tendency for other state organs to simply apply the laws. In this regard, one such commentator remarked that it is essential that we should learn to say no to unwarranted parliamentary violations of human rights, and advocated for the establishment of a true human rights culture in our country, arguing forcefully that to achieve this, the rule of law must be strongly supported. Deputy Speaker, honourable members, this commentator is none other than Dr. Don Hlophe. In a learned article in the South African Law Journal of February 1995, it is the very same Dr. Hlophe who now proclaims that our legal system, the one transformed from an apartheid-enabling system to one founded on the rule of law and human rights, is nothing but a system imposed upon us by our former colonizers, and is, if not the problem, then at least part of the problem in our country. He is, of course, now the leader of the MK party in this House. A cursory reading of the election manifesto of the MK party makes it very clear that they are not constitutionally inclined. Their goal, clearly stated, is to destroy our constitution. A constitution painstakingly drafted, lauded internationally, and one that has served us well. MK would replace our constitutional democracy with a government of parliamentary supremacy. Now we know from our painful history that it is precisely that structure of government that gave rise to apartheid, the passing of racially discriminatory laws, and the causing of untold misery for all South Africans. Yet upon entering the service of South Africans in this House, all MK MPs, like all other MPs, swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Those who drafted our Constitution did not contemplate a situation where those found wanting when entrusted with upholding our Constitution could simply move to another position where the same obligation was to be sworn to. However, the drafters, in their infinite wisdom, gifted us with a safeguard that to break down into constitutional supremacy and the rule of law requires the support of at least 75% of the members of this House. They did this because they realized that we needed a definitive break with parliamentary supremacy if our constitutional democracy is to withstand those who try to subvert it. This firewall we will work ceaselessly to protect. The parliamentary leader of MK also swore an oath to uphold the Constitution when he became a judge. An oath that he regarded with such frivolity that he has become the first judge to be impeached in democratic South Africa for behavior so odious, so beyond the pale, that he was found guilty of gross misconduct by the Judicial Services Commission. Now this is the man who is before you all today, a man who swore an oath repeatedly to defend and uphold our Constitution, yet he has now a stated intent to destroy our constitutional democracy. This is the type of political smoke and mirror game that is to be expected. A true homecoming for someone who has always seen himself as a politician, a man who cannot be trusted. Our Constitution embodies a never again moment.
Please take your seat. Could you please take your seat? There is a point of order.
Honorable Speaker, I rise on the point of order. Rule 43, actually 53 is very clear that we can't have a member insinuating or insulting and disrespectful to another member of parliament. Rule 53 is very clear. So if Honorable Breitenbach can withdraw that, because she forgets herself that she's from NPA and she was charged criminally, so she can't impugn this to another member of parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. In your point of order, you in fact did the exact same thing as what you are accusing the Honourable Member at the podium. Honourable Members, order. Honourable Breitenbach, you came extremely close to falling foul of Rule 53. So please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I see it is... Our Constitution embodies a never again moment. Never again will we allow the rule of men to threaten our democracy, our human rights and our freedom. We will work ceaselessly during this 7th administration, from one debate to the next, to expose those who yearn for the system that enable personal ambitions to trump the law. I thank you.
I now call on the Honourable Mao Mapelo.
Madam Deputy Speaker and the collective of the Presidium, the President and the collective of the Executive, the collective of the honorable members who are the first line and the last line of defense in executing oversight over the executive, all members who are following the proceedings of today here on the debate of the speech of the President. Honorable members, from the outset, we need to make it plainly clear that our quest to build a better Africa and a better world is a necessary strategic goal that we need to strive for. This necessary strategic goal is anchored on 3 pillars. The first pillar is our national interests, which must under all circumstances supersede any other interest. The second pillar is the necessary understanding that the struggle we prosecute to build a better Africa and a better world is a struggle that is in perpetuity. It's like a road that is perpetually under construction. And the third pillar is based on the understanding that the African National Congress is not in the business of political pendularism. Because the ANC ideologically is very much steadfast, it doesn't act like a pendulum. Therefore, this necessary understanding of the third pillar is important because building a better Africa and a better world is something which we as the leadership collectively have to understand that its dynamics are based on us having to internalize the fact that we must master the art of managing contradictions globally. It is in this context, honorable members, to not only understand but to internalize the reality that the leadership to whom we bestow the responsibility to build a better Africa and a better world must at all material times seek to improve their individual and collective understanding, as I've already said. We must also make it patently clear that our approach as the ANC on matters of international relations and cooperation is premised on solid principles of democracy, peace, respect for sovereignty, anti-imperialism, cooperation, respect, and adherence to the rule of law, among other things. Bequeathed to us as this House and society in general, it is the unparalleled international solidarity work done by President Oliver Tambo and the African National Congress when they spared no energy nor strength to do work with the international community to bring about democracy in this country. Everything that they embarked upon to make sure that we annihilate, throttle, weaken, and ultimately defeat the monster of colonialism and apartheid, which was declared a crime against humanity by the United Nations, was done to precision and at all material times making sure that the entire globe is mobilized behind that task. In the same context, Madam Presiding Officer, bequeathed to us as a living generation is the practical step as part of our international solidarity undertaken, we welcomed and supported, which was welcomed and supported by the Algerian people when Nelson Mandela went out as part of practical expression of solidarity and got training for military purposes of executing the struggle in our country. When the Land Act was introduced by our oppressors in 1913, The leaders of our people, through the then SANNC, sought to embark on various initiatives internationally as part of diplomacy through deputations and petitions to make sure that Britain hears the call of South Africans here for them to get their land back. 111 years later, we are still firm on the international solidarity work to build a better Africa and a better world. This work that we do, honorable members, whether it's on Palestine, whether it's making sure that we participate in the United Nations and all its ancillary bodies, making sure that there's peace in the African continent, making sure that we, as a country, the SADC work that is aimed at not only developing SADC economies, but also making sure that we cooperate with our SADC countries to build neighborliness is part of our approach as the African National Congress on international relations. We have 370 trade agreements. Those trade agreements in the long term should find expression in the type of South Africa we seek to build, which is non-sexist, non-racial, and prosperous. The BRICS work that we do with countries that have been in BRICS and those that have joined BRICS is aimed at nothing else but making sure that we continue our quest to build a better Africa and a better world. The economy of Africa that we are trying to build, integrate, and grow through the AfCFTA is aimed also at making sure that part of the integration of the African continent includes necessary matters of growing its economies. I want to, Madam Speaker, as I conclude, because I can see the time is running out, to quote Pixley Kaisaka Seme. Pixley Kaisaka Seme said, "Today, we as the African people, the animosity that exists between the Zulus and the Tsongas, between the Basotus, and every native must be buried and forgotten. It has shed among us sufficient blood. We are one people. These divisions, these jealousies, are the cause of all our woes and all our backwardness and ignorance," close quote. We, the African people, honorable members, it is utmost necessary to bequeath to future generations a crystallized, solid, unshakable African unity upon which a non-racial, non-sexist, and a proper society will be built. This is an almost solemn prerequisite for us to succeed in building a better Africa and a better world. Ke a leboga, Musakgotla.
I now invite Honorable the Chief Whip of the Council in
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, Honorable Speaker, Medi Diza, Honorable Chairperson of the National Council of Province, Mayor Philo Mtsweni Tsipane, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, the Deputy President Paul Mashatile, President of SALGA, Honorable members. Indeed, the official opening of the democratically elected 7th Democratic Parliament yesterday marked yet another important chapter in the evolution of the constitutional democracy. We are truly humbled that the official opening of the 7th of Parliament took place on a day that is dedicated to honor and celebrate the indelible legacy of our icon of global peace, humanity, and freedom, the late former President Nelson Mandela, as we honor the iconic life of the President Nelson Mandela in his self-service to humanity. We reaffirm our pledge to continue to work and tirelessly to liberate all our people from the persistent bondages of the legacy of poverty, deprivation, suffering, and all forms of discrimination and suffering that our people face. We do so, Deputy Speaker, because we must ensure that indeed we live and see in practice the concept of the people shall govern that the Freedom Charter spoke of in 1955. To achieve this, Deputy Speaker, we must have a People's Parliament and parliamentary constituency offices that are used as springboards for community outreach work. These offices must be the hub for advice, the engine rooms for discussion, and center where communities can receive. Indeed, we must appreciate the confidence in which our President took us into by convening the 7th Parliament, this joint sitting, to be able to take us through the priorities that the government of GNU has identified. Indeed, this is a confirmation that as the 7th Parliament, we assure you, President, that this will be an activist parliament. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the President has correctly characterized the May 29 national and provincial elections and their outcome that will go down in the narration of the profound stories of our democratic transition as one of the key chronicles of change since 1994. They are among the most critical watersheds in the evolution of our democracy. We deeply appreciate the role that our masses, our people, and their political mass democratic movements, the religious formations, women, youth, business, traditional leaders, have played in making sure that these elections further reaffirm our common destiny. As the African National Congress, Deputy Speaker, we take part in this debate with clear conscience that the formation of an inclusive government of national unity under the leadership of the mighty African National Congress remains a viable reality dictated by the popular will of the people. And as the Freedom Charter proclaims, the of the people, and as the Freedom Charter proclaims, there is no government that can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of the people. Honorable Deputy Speaker, we commit to rally the 7th Parliament behind the President's vision because it is based on the government 30-year review of South Africa's democracy, which indeed provided detailed boilerplate of the state of our nation and documents in great detail the significant successes that our nation has made since the fall of apartheid in 1994. Of course, it also narrates stark challenges that our people still face as we steadfastly wage a concerted battle against the legacy of apartheid, colonialism, segregation, and apartheid special settlement. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the malignance of corruption, hard-pressed state capacity to provide basic services to the people, especially the local government, and the poor economic performance are among the critical setbacks and challenges of the democratic state over the recent past that the President has correctly identified as among the key strategic priorities of the 7th administration. As identified in the diagnostic report of the National Planning Commission, the fragmented planning, competing roles and poor policy coordination are among the key areas in the three spheres of our democratic governance that has to be attended to. Honorable President, as the African National Congress, we reaffirm our pledge to the people of South Africa to work with everyone and all sectors of our society in pursuit of Nelson Mandela's vision of a better future. We owe it to the legacy of President Nelson Mandela to join all our efforts in ensuring that our Constitution remains the firm and sole roadster that binds into the shared agenda founded on the values of human dignity. The Constitution, Honorable Deputy Speaker, locates the National Council of Province as the only legislative chamber whose oversight straddles across the three spheres of system of democratic governance. This gives it the unique and differentiated oversight role with immense possibilities, not only to strengthen integrated cooperative governance among the three spheres of our system of democratic governance, these three spheres that are distinct, interrelated, and interdependent. But therefore, the role of the NCOP at the cutting edge of strengthening our system of local government cannot be overemphasized. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the NCOP has three flagship programs that we will be pursuing as part and parcel of strengthening Parliament as an activist one. Taking Parliament to the people, the NCOP Provincial Week, and then the NCOP Local Government Week. These programs have deepened the dialogue among the three spheres. Also, as the 7th Parliament, we recommit ourselves to ensure that the district development model will also be on our radar. Mr. President and honorable members, among the abiding critical lessons of the last 8 years of our democracy are three interrelated fundamental questions that require honest conversation and policy rethink if we are to turn our system of local government around in a more meaningful way. First is the current funding model of local government appropriate to address the developmental challenges of our communities. Secondly, how do we measure up the success of our democracy and the intervention of Parliament in the midst of municipalities that fail to fulfill their obligations in terms of the Constitution? And lastly, to what extent has our current public participation model fostered a responsive activist people's parliament? Indeed, the planning cycle of the committees of the 7th administration will definitely ensure that these three fundamental questions are responded to. But critical to that is the issue of public participation. Because, Mr. President, in the seminal Lamosa judgment, the court has outlined two interrelated important points when it comes to the importance of public participation. First, the duty of Parliament to provide meaningful opportunity for participation, and secondly, the obligation and commitment by Parliament to demonstrate the willingness to integrate people's voices in the policy making, and if not so, evidence to the effect why the views are not being integrated. In the same breath, our oversight, the success of our oversight must be measured by the impact that it makes in changing the lives of our people. This will require conscious and deliberate scrutiny of the reports of the relevant Chapter 9 institutions and partnering with them around key service delivery issues. Mr. President, allow me in conclusion to assure you and the collective leadership of the African National Congress that we are fully behind you, and history will vindicate you for having risen to the challenges when it was so much required, by avoiding to pay to the public gallery, by avoiding narrow choices that could have deepened the polarization of this country along the identities defined by the apartheid colonial heritage. You have stood true to the historic mission of the founding fathers of the African National Congress to unite the people in their diversity for the pursuit of one common national destiny of a better quality life for all. We pledge ourselves to continue supporting you, your efforts to liberate all our people from the continuing bondages of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender oppression, and other discrimination. We recommit ourselves to working tirelessly to ensure that the reconstruction of our nation is complete and triumph in the effort to implant hope in the hearts of our people. Ke a leboga, Motlatsa Musa Kgotla.
I now invite the Honourable Kwankwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Mna ndizuthetha ngeendaba ndibele nazo apha endleleni. Honorable Deputy Speaker, democratic governance is always in a state of flux. It goes through various phases, which is constructed, deconstructed, and reconstructed. South Africans have actually asked us to reconstruct our democratic systems of governance. In so doing, I think what is important for us is the development of an overarching national narrative about what should be the priorities and development goals of our country as we go forward. And we do so in a manner that ensures that there's no contradiction between our founding principles or whatever program we are going to develop and the social realities on the ground. The other important issue, President, is that it is clear when you hold to account the various government departments that there has been no alignment, rather, between the National Development Plan and some of the annual performance plans of the different departments. If plans are going to be developed for the next 5 years, it's important the medium-term development plan you were talking about, it's important that there's alignment so that people are held to account for the targets that they are going to set going forward. President, South Africa faces a cost of living crisis of gargantuan proportions, with rocketing food and fuel prices, while aggressive interest rate hikes erode our people's disposable income. According to a research conducted recently, the annual average of a household food basket has increased by a whopping 64% from 2019 to 2023. And Stats SA General Household Service showed an indication that in 2022, social grants became number 2 as the source of income for households in our country, which means our people are living in poverty. But what is even worse is that while the 350 rands which provides our people with a much needed relief, it falls short of the inflation-adjusted national food poverty line, which stands at about 760 per person per month, which means we require the introduction of a basic income grant. In light of the issues and the myriad of socio-economic challenges facing the country, such as the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, it is morally difficult to justify a milli-money state that provides no social safety net or security net for the poor. However, a durable solution to our problem in our country centers around the issue we cited yesterday, which is reigniting the economic growth of our country and putting our economy back on track. One of the issues you cited was the importance or the need for the reindustrialization of the South African economy. We support that entirely. Why? Because economic literature is replete with empirical evidence about the relationship, especially the positive correlation that exists between reindustrialization or industrializing and development in the country. However, it means that when we implement the new reindustrialization strategy, it must be done in a non-conventional sense. One, for example, it cannot be the domain of one department. We have to ensure that it requires an intensive coordination across a range of government departments in order for it to work. The other issue is that we need to maintain intersectoral linkages that are important to enhance and inform the robustness of the industrial policy design and implementation across government, meaning it's a mindset, it's not a one-off issue. President, one of the issues which is important for us to consider is where we need to make sure that we maintain our energy independence as much as we're trying to move towards an energy mix, because without energy independence, you lose your sovereignty as a country. Crime intelligence is a challenge, and violent crime is a problem in South Africa, which requires the attention of South Africa and us to invest money because our people in communities are living in fear. I've cited this in the budget program
Honourable
for
Kwankwa,
police.
your time has
It's
expired.
worth repeating because that is what is destroying our economies. Thank you.
And I'll call on the Honourable Zibi.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Mr. President, the Honorable Deputy President, members of the Executive, and honorable members. Mr. President, there is little to disagree with in what you said last night, in outlining the matters that need yours and our collective urgent attention. The issues keeping South Africans awake at night have been self-evident for years. The goals we set for dealing with the same are also obvious. Which president would not say they want the best schooling for their country's children to guarantee a better future for them and our nation? Which president would not say they want safe, prosperous communities? And so, Mr. President, you said many of the right things. But it is also true to say that we live in a time that demands more of you and demands more of us in this House. We need a new language that reflects a new attitude on the same issues that are the symptoms of our ills as a society. We are a society where public servants live in fear of getting killed, such as Advocate Nodier, who was doing work for SARS and was shot and critically injured in eThekwini yesterday, in broad daylight. She was shot by assailants who strolled over to their getaway car. The rich walk and drive around surrounded by people armed with firearms bigger than those carried by your protectors, Mr. President. They send a message that says our state is weak and not the center of democratic power it must be. We are becoming numb to human suffering. Millions of people that in today's weather get to confront the depth of the indignity that torments their lives. And that this is where many children are born into inhumanity, grow up in inhumanity, lose hope, and die poor, having never seen the promised land. That, Mr. President, is a profound crisis. It was in this building just over 34 years ago, Mr. President, that you, as a much younger man, held the bullhorn for a revered Madiba as he addressed the South African people the day he walked out of prison. As you know, that was also a time of crisis. It was a crisis so deep that the very birth of our democracy was hailed as a miracle. Today, we have another profound crisis that needs another miracle. The symbolism of this venue and the fact of Madiba's birthday yesterday offers you and all of us an opportunity to challenge ourselves anew. I want to challenge you, Mr. President, that in your response next week, you speak to the South African soul. I ask you to do more than offer objectives and targets. I ask you to inspire, to unite, not just your cabinet, but an entire nation crying for new hope. Yesterday, you promised that in due course you will revert with clear targets and timelines and fiscal allocations for all the themes you addressed in your speech. Urgency is the currency of the times in which we now live. Bring those commitments back to this House so they can form the basis of the contract Parliament uses to hold the executive accountable. There are many of us who understand that being here is a sacred duty. So we will do our duty vigorously, but always in good faith, because this is exactly how the founders of our democratic system wanted it to work. Mr. President, you represent the last of the generation that both fought for freedom and lived to lead in what was supposed to be the promised land. None of us has the luxury of time. Our system of government gives us 5 years to write a different legacy, to hand over a baton filled with hope for future generations. We have an opportunity to write, through our actions, a brilliant narrative for the next 30 years of our national life. To paraphrase the great Dalibunga, we dare not linger, for with freedom come responsibilities. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Next on the speakers list is the Honourable Gericke.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In die belang van tyd gaan ek ook net sê alle protokol gaan af. Die opening toespraak van president Ramaphosa gisteraand sou mense wat vir die eerste keer na hom geluister het in ekstase en in opgewondenheid gehad het. Dit was gevul met goeie stories en vol beloftes. Ek het ook gehoor van klaarblyklike suksesse van werkskepping en ekonomiese groei. Ek is met eens herinner daaraan dat diezelfde storie van beloftes en 'n beter lewe vir almal ook voorgehou was by die president se Tumamina toespraak in die 2018 State of the Nation Address. Na sy joviale toespraak en beloftes het egter bitter min gebeur vir agtergeblewe Suid-Afrikaners. Inteendeel, onder die regering van president Ramaphosa het die werkloosheidssyfer die hoogte ingeskiet, informele nedersettings het vermeerder, meer besighede het al deure toegemaak, dienslewering protesoptogte het toegeneem en geweld en misdaad het deel geword van ons volk se daaglikse bestaan. As 'n bruin Suid-Afrikaner is ek hewig ontsteld dat my mense se omstandighede onder die Ramaphosa regering verder agteruit gegaan het. Die bruin volk het 'n vergete volk geword onder u regering, meneer die president. Die bruin volk leef van die krummels van die basis se tafels af. Ons identiteit is vinnig besig om te verdwyn nadat die grond van ons voorouers met alle mag onder ons uitverkoop word aan die ryk ontwikkelaars, wit ontwikkelaars. Onder u regering is daar bitter min gedoen om die grondregte van die Khoi en die Sanvolk te herstel. Die sogenaamde proses van restitusie het 'n vaardroom geword vir miljoene breinmense. Breinmense leef in erger en groter verdrukking as voor 1994. Swart en breinkinders sit met kwalifikasies en grade sonder werk. Dit terwyl u roem daarin dat 2 miljoen werksgeleenthede deur u regering geskep is. Dit maak nie sin nie, ons kan dit nêrens sien nie. Breinmense in die Weskaap leef in haglike omstandighede. Bende geweld het 'n daaglikse fenomeen geword in ons woongebiede. Bejaardes en vroue en kinders is gevangenes in hul eie huise en omgewing. Gebiede soos Mitchells Plain, Elicha, Guguletu, Hanover Park, Eerste Rivier, Eldorado. Park en vele meer het oorlogsones geword. Toe u die nasate van apartheid-argitekte en beginsigtes opgeneem het in die sogenaamde regering van nasionale eenheid. Ironies genoeg is die grootste beginsigtes weer eens wit Suid-Afrika wat baat gevind het by die onderdrukking van bruin, Indiër en swart mense. Weer eens wit Suid-Afrika wat baat gevind het by mags- en menseregte vergrype, hulle vind nou baat. Hoe kan ons vrede maak met 'n regering van nasionale eenheid as die proses van versoening en vergifnis nog nie afgehandel is nie? En ons leef nie in die verlede nie, meneer Guyton McKenzie. We don't live in the past, we live in the current. Ons leef in die realiteit waarin ons onsself bevind in die hedendaagse Suid-Afrika. I close. to the embarrassment and disgrace of all freedom fighters and peace-loving people in our country. Some of your cabinet ministers, Mr. President, defend the inclusion of the stem in our national anthem. The stem is a racist, anti-transformation, filthy, apartheid song that has no place in our democratic dispensation. It is hurting. It is hurting the racist. It is hurting the millions of South Africans who suffered the evil of racist white South Africa. The stem is a cause of trauma to millions who were oppressed, discriminated against, subjugated, evicted, and forcefully removed and displaced. Today, Mr. President, I close. The EFF reminds you of the Arab Spring of 2010. The factors that led to this uprising were human rights violations, corruption, economic decline, unemployment, and extreme poverty, such as experienced in South Africa today. Your government of national unity,
your time has expired.
Your government of national unity will not be able to stop a similar event if you do not take decisive action and restore the dignity of the masses by doing justice to the marginalized, poor, and vulnerable section of our community. Forward.
I now call upon the next honourable member to speak, and that is the Honourable Maimane. You have 4 minutes.
Honourable members, fellow South Africans, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, Bagaid Sudumelang. Sorry, Chairperson. Sorry. Let me begin by welcoming last night's address by the President on the opening of Parliament. I think none of us can deny that the ideals that the President put forward can be things that are not desirable to the people of this country. The speech in its entirety outlined 12 priorities to which I think none of us could deny the fact that we are in desperate need of those things, and many of them we've heard them before. But as Build One South Africa, I want to reaffirm that we want to play a constructive role in being able to hold the executive to account and speak about where we go in terms of this government of national unity. It's in the light of that spirit that I want to, Mr. President, look at perhaps a 30-year period since 1994 and ahead to 2030, highlighting some lessons we can learn. The first is perhaps the period between 2000 to 2010. What could be defined from unity to execution? We had one priority, which was to focus on delivering a sensible World Cup. We averaged growth of 3.5%. Because we did one thing, we narrowed priorities. We prioritized policing and started to spend more on policing and saw the reduction of murder. We borrowed to fund infrastructure rather than to keep our social spend. Mr. President, it's worth noting the fact that at that time, that cabinet was much smaller than what it is today. I guess the lesson we can learn from that decade is that when we prioritize, choose priorities, we deliver growth. 12 priorities is just too many, Mr. President. I would urge we narrow them down and give South Africans a singular focus we can achieve collectively as a people. Secondly, Mr. President, I would urge that in learning from that, let's not borrow to fund our social spend. Let's borrow to build infrastructure. That way we can deliver growth. The second decade to look at is a decade between 2010 to 2020. This was a decade of great interest to many South Africans because in many ways we moved from public finance becoming personal finance. The state became a tool for individuals. And so I urge, we can have a government of national unity, but we dare not forget that we've lived through a decade of VBS, of Steinhoff, of state capture, and urge, Mr. President, all acts of corruption must be arrested. Unity does not erase it. I ask. Sorry, Chairperson. Can you protect me?
Order, honorable members. Let the speaker on the podium have his say.
So, Mr. President, let me ask, rather than funding VIP security, let us fund the NPA and the SIU and get after wrongdoers. I welcome your focus on local government, Mr. President, but again, I urge you, local government doesn't fail for lack of summits. It fails primarily because state capture is still occurring there still. Let me go to the third decade because that's going to be the most important, from 2020 to 2030. I cite this because 6 years from now will be 2030 and the NDP was meant to be done. Mr. President, this will be a period defined by geopolitics.
Start rounding up.
Oh. So, in this particular period, let me highlight a few things that COVID have taught us. The first is that we introduced a 350 SRD grant. Mr. President, let me ask you, let's convert this to a basic income grant so that we can budget for it in the midterm. The second is, let's educate our young people. They're not competing with each other, they're competing with the world. So I would urge, Mr. President, let's ensure that we scrap the 30% pass mark. Lastly, Mr. President, let's move from fossil energy to sustainable energy and make this country the battery center of this world. We do this. By 2030, we'll tell our children that we were able to grow an economy and develop a future for our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I call upon the next speaker, and that is the Honorable Ryder. Honorable Ryder, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson. Mr. President, Madam Speaker, and all South Africans, what an historic moment in our young democracy's evolution this is. What an honor it is to be part of this historic joint sitting, and what an honor it is for me to be part of the team in Parliament where we hope to restore the reputation of our Parliament to one that performs rigorous oversight over the work of the ministers and their departments. The role of the National Council of Provinces has previously been the target of pejorative nicknames, and this has been partly deserved, as the dominance of one party overwhelmed the rest, diluted the oversight role, and reduced our House to little more than a rubber stamp. That time is over. Section 42 of the Constitution directs the NCOP to ensure that the interests of provinces are furthered during the creation of legislation and in the subsequent monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of these laws. Importantly, though, Section 44 gives an additional role and charges the House with the performance of a senatorial role over legislation that does not directly impact provinces. What this means is that, noting the new composition of the NCOP, money bills and Section 75 legislation will no longer be able to be rushed through the NCOP with a predetermined outcome. Indeed, we saw substantial amendments to, amongst others, the Public Procurement Bill and the Bailier Bill as they were put through our committees in the NCOP in the 6th Parliament. That will continue. Senates and upper houses around the world are retained for their moderative influence over legislation in a less politically charged environment than the bigger assemblies. The NCOP is no different. The voters of South Africa delivered a clear message to political parties during the election. That message told us that no one party has all of the answers, and that we will need to put our heads together and seek solutions to take our diverse nation's needs into consideration as we find ways to rescue South Africa from the steep downward trajectory that has been driven by those who would break down what we have. We have been given a mandate by the electorate to cooperate and find the best in each other, compromising our solutions, but only when there is a better option that puts South Africa first. Where a whole new solution needs to be crafted, this must be done. That is the work of the President and the Executive. As we enter a new era of balance and compromise, it will be the role of both Houses of Parliament to ensure that the laws presented meet this mandate and that the implementation of these laws and the wider focus of government departments as well all meet the standards that South Africans wish to see from this government. Mr. President, your speech last night was filled with hope. You reassured us that you know where the problems lie and you know what direction to take to set things right. So if I can repeat a line from my speech from the joint sitting when we debated the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, I said, bring the good legislation and we will help you pass it. Our position on this has not changed. We are here to build South Africa. The select committees of the National Council of Provinces will do our part to ensure that good legislation is passed and to ensure that bills are improved following consultation with provinces and with the public. And then we will monitor the departments on the implementation. Mr. President, congratulations on your election. Congratulations on filling a cabinet that reflects the response to the mandate that the voters have given us. We look forward to hosting you in the NCOP and your deputy and the ministers. You will be called there to account for all of your decisions. If you have done your job as demanded by South Africans, it will be a comfortable affair. But where there are failures, expect to be called out and asked to explain what solutions you are proposing. For many years, Mr. President, I've ended my speeches with a Sesotho call to action because I am, after all, from Gauteng. That call to action has never been more apt. Re tswelopele, kaofela, ke a leboga.
Thank you. And now I call upon the next speaker, that is the Honorable the Deputy Minister of Human Settlements. Deputy Minister, you have 8 minutes.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Honorable Mdumiseni Ntuli, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa, the Deputy President, Honorable Paul Mashatile, Honorable members, fellow South Africans, allow me to greet you. Today, I stand on this pedestal to reaffirm our commitment to the progressive policies that have guided our nation over the past 3 decades. As we address the critics raised by the doomsayers and the new political apprentice, it is crucial to highlight the consistent progress we have made and our unwavering dedication to transforming the lives of South Africans for the better. Our efforts in human settlements have played a pivotal role in the broader vision outlined by the President during his opening of Parliament address on contributing significantly to creating a capable state. In his address to Parliament, President Ramaphosa highlighted our nation's resilience and the unity in the face of adversity. He spoke of our collective efforts to rebuild and recover from natural disasters and economic challenges. His emphasis on inclusive growth, healthcare reform, and social equity aligns with our long-standing commitments. He likened us to weaver birds, known for their ability to work collectively to build complex and resilient structures. This analogy beautifully captures the essence of our strength, which lies in our unity and collective efforts. Our achievements over the past 30 years are a testament of what we can accomplish when we work together towards a common goal. President's address underscored our commitment to pro-poor interventions, our efforts in human settlements, such as providing housing, supporting the indigent households, and ensuring access to basic services are clear examples of these interventions. These initiatives are designed to uplift the most disadvantaged, and ensuring that no one is left behind. Mr. President, your focus on driving inclusive economic growth and job creation mirrors our strategies over the past 3 decades. Our labor-intensive projects, support for SMMEs, and skills development initiatives are crucial components of this agenda. Our policies have created millions of jobs and provided economic opportunities to those who need them most. Madam Speaker, our targeted human resource development initiatives, particularly in TVET colleges and skills training, are essential for building a capable workforce. The President's emphasis on these areas underscores the importance in driving economic growth and reducing inequalities. Over the past decades, the ANC government made significant strides in improving title deeds to providing title deeds to millions of South Africans. Home ownership is fundamental to empowering individuals and ensuring long-term economic stability. Since 1994, we have issued over 1 million title deeds, giving many citizens the legal recognition of their properties. This has provided security and enabled homeowners to leverage their properties for economic activities and investments. Honorable members, social housing programs have been pivotal in creating inclusive and integrated communities. We have developed over 300,000 social housing units through partnerships with other institutions. These initiatives have revitalized urban areas, reduced informal settlements, and provided quality housing near economic opportunities. Improving living standards and fosters social cohesion and inclusivity. Infrastructure development is the backbone of sustainable human settlements. We have invested significantly in infrastructure, including water and sanitation systems, road and public transport. The rollout of these projects have improved living conditions and created numerous job opportunities. For instance, the EPWP has provided over 8 million work opportunities, contributing to skills development and economic empowerment. The human settlement sector has been a major driver of job creation and skills development. Infrastructure projects, housing construction, and maintenance activities have created thousands of jobs, particularly for youth and women. Skills development programs associated with these projects have equipped many individuals with valuable skills, enhancing their employability and economic prospects. The sector's contribution to the GDP and economic growth cannot be overstated, as it stimulates various industries from construction to manufacturing and services. Mr. President, our government investment in the youth is evident through various programs aimed at education, skills development, and employment. Technical and vocational education and training colleges have played a crucial role in equipping young South Africans with practical skills. Youth-targeted initiatives such as Youth Employment Services, meaning the YES, have provided job opportunities and work experience, paving the way for their future careers. Over the past decade, these programs have benefited millions of young people, preparing them for active participation in the economy. Gender equality is at the core of our development agenda. We have implemented numerous programs to support women empowerment, including access to housing, finance and employment opportunities. Women-led housing projects and cooperatives have been established, providing both housing and economic opportunities for women. Our commitment to gender equality is further demonstrated by policies that ensure women benefit equitably from government programs and initiatives. Our progressive legislative framework has been instrumental in driving transformation and ensuring social justice. As we continue on this path, let us remain focused on our goals and committed to improving the lives of all South Africans. Our achievements are clear indication that we are on the right track, and with continued effort and dedication, we can achieve even greater success.
Honorable Deputy Minister, your time has expired.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson.
And I call upon the Honorable M.M. Peter. Honorable Member, you have 6 minutes.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable President, Deputy President, Kwete Mandashe Molo, honorable members,
Honorable members, allow the speaker to continue.
Honorable President, EUDM Mhlekazi ayixolanga si-State of the Nation address ubuvula indlu yowiso-mthetho izolo ngezithembiso President ozenzileyo waze awanika detailed ukubuza ungena njani kule miceli-mngeni yonzakalisa isizwe. Okwesibini, President, ukusukela ngo-1918 ungenile kulawulo asibonanga ziqhamo zinqumisayo, President. Okwesithathu, President, ulutsha, President, lusajonge enkalweni lujonge imisebenzi. Kwi-State of the Nation address ever usenza, President, uthembisa ngemisebenzi. Urhulumente kwalulawulayo ukunika i-stats esithi abantu abaqashwa izinga linyukile ngu-32%, the same government that you are presiding over. And there's no bio contradiction na, President. Okwesibini, President, isizwe, in South Africa, there is no water. Akomanzi. Sitamanzi, President, yimpilo. Life is, water is life. Xa engekho amanzi, iphi na impilo. Mandiyikhumtshele le ndawo mhlawumbi uzayiva kakuhle, President. Earlier this year, the former police minister, Bheki Cele, released alarming crime statistics for the third quarter of the financial year 2023 and 2024, showing the communities across South Africa are under siege from violent criminals in major cities, President. Gqeberha is ranking at number 8 of the highest number of most dangerous cities in the world. iGqeberha le ndihlala kuyo president irate number 8 kwi-world ngecrime ekhoyo president. Abantu president eGqeberha, they are murdered daily. Otitshala ezikolweni batitsha besoyika barojwa i-cellphone. Abefundisi ezicaweni bashumayela besoyika bayarojwa abefundisi. Amapolisa, the same police president aba under your state, ayarojwa amapolisa, ayarojwa amapolisa president. Kuthathwa firearms emapoliseni kwenziwe icrime ngazo president. Ikwayara yakho ayikuncedi ndawo, your choir ayikuncedi ndawo, sithetha ngelizwe ngoku. President Cyril Ramaphosa, my honorable president, you spoke about deploying modern technology to end the crime. Siyappreciate Londo Mhlekazi. And sithi Mhlekazi ayonelanga. We need the visibility of the police in our rural areas. Dear President, amajoni, my dear President, ahlelele ntoni kwi-barracks abantu besifa ezilokishini. People are dying every day in our township. Amajoni ahleli agade bani ziphi imfazwe president. Abantu, they've been massacred all over South Africa, President. You never, through your speech, touch no pain. Okugqibela President, ngangendlela abantu ababulawa ngayo kwindawo esihlala kuzo President, abantwana bethu boyika nokudlala phandle. We are traumatized. We are traumatized, President. Sinoloyiko, hijacking, high President. Okugqibela ke President. Phaya eGqeberha, President, through your State of the Nation address.
Honourable member, your time is
expired. Masbayeke abaculi kwayara sakubuya ngabo enkosi President.
Thank you, honourable members. I now call upon the Deputy Minister of Finance, Honourable Sarupan. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I want to start my remarks today, Mr. President, by emphasizing that the Democratic Alliance commits itself absolutely to driving inclusive growth and creating job opportunities for all South Africans. And we believe that the GNU has rightly identified the apex priority of this administration to drive inclusive growth and job creation, because when you look at the data, it is the single most important thing that we can do over the next 5 years.
Member, can you please take your seat? I see a hand up there. What is your point of order and which rule are you standing on?
On a point of order.
On which
Chair.
rule?
The Speaker
On
cannot
which
speak.
rule are you standing on, Honourable Member?
The Speaker cannot
Sorry,
speak on a point of order.
On which rule?
Yes, give me a chance.
Please quote the rule number.
Yes, Chair, listen.
I am listening, but if you have a point of order, you must stand
Chair,
on the rule.
the point of order. Yes, Chair. Okay, that's fine. I'm standing on Rule 40. Chair, may the Speaker please respect this House. You are addressing the nation. You can't address the nation sitting down. Please, stand up and address the nation.
No, that's not a point of order. Continue, Honourable Deputy Minister.
I suppose now that I'm at the Treasury, anyone involved in VBS is going to get a bit hot under the collar. But regardless, I will keep a close eye on those matters, Mr. President. We'll look into VBS, I commit. Now, we face a deepening unemployment crisis, Mr. President, and young people are the hardest hit. More than half of young people cannot find jobs. And we must acknowledge that this unemployment crisis has its roots in the failures of past administrations, particularly between 2010 and 2018, and some parties try to pretend that they weren't involved during that time, unfortunately. But we now need to create the conditions conducive for economic growth, and we must get back to growth. And this GNU presents us with a unique opportunity to get onto this growth trajectory. And our success or failure as a GNU will be measured, Mr. President, collectively by whether or not we get this economy moving. And when you said that our experience over the past 30 years has shown that when the economy grows, jobs are created. When it contracts, jobs are lost. It is self-evident, and it is bizarre to me that there are parties who seem to deny this relationship, but we know the truth. And in fact, the relationship between economic growth and job creation has only strengthened since the dawn of our democracy as we've transformed to a services economy. So the more we grow the economy, the more jobs will be created. And we also agree, Mr. President, that growth must be inclusive and transformational. And the transformation that we need is to pull millions of people out of poverty and into the middle class, because this will be felt by all South Africans. Now, in addressing the role of municipalities, Mr. President, you mentioned that municipalities must become both providers of social services and facilitators of inclusive economic growth. The DA has experience in this particular area, expertise, I might say, in Cape Town, in Midvaal, in Mgeni, and elsewhere, and we are ready to extend a hand of friendship and lend this expertise across the state. Because local government can be a driver of growth, but it can only happen if we stop pushing unfunded mandates onto local governments, and we must make sure that local government complies with its core constitutional mandate of service delivery. We must also make sure that we inject capital into infrastructure at local government level to prevent a collapse of service delivery. It is both an economic and moral imperative. We also support, Mr. President, your call to simplify regulations on public-private partnerships to enable greater investment in social and economic infrastructure. And we must move with speed to invest in infrastructure that targets areas that both enable economic opportunity and to rescue them from collapse and failure, particularly in roads, in rail, in energy, and in ports. And Mr. President, I welcome, in particular, your commitment to stabilizing debt and reducing the cost of servicing our debt. And I've been very critical in the past of this factor, but Mr. President, I'll concede today that, again, certain parties that pretend to be new accumulated this debt when they corrupted and bailed out our SOEs to the tune of 500 billion rand between 2010 and 2018. And we must not let them get away with it and pretend that they didn't do it. We must acknowledge that the root cause of these bailouts and failures was state capture. And now, to meet our fiscal targets, Mr. President, we must make sure that we have the political will to not bail out these SOEs anymore. We need a paradigm shift from the 2010 to 2018 administration sitting over there. And we must invest in growth, not bail out failure. And, Mr. President, we fully endorse the proposal to expand the zero-rated VAT basket and the comprehensive review of administered prices. Administered prices have been a significant driver of inflation, and market-related prices, as opposed to administered prices, have actually had much lower levels of inflation. But we do have points of divergence, and of course it is around BEE. Every party included in the GNU agrees that we must get better economic outcomes for the poor and address historical imbalances. And I can say, Mr. President, proudly that the DA believes in redress, but we do not support creating new systems of exclusion. In the state, we do not use race to determine who gets a social grant or an RDP house, but these interventions have been very successful precisely because they use poverty as the marker of who to empower, not race. And it's moving to that system more broadly would end the rent-seeking and abuse by politicians who enrich themselves repeatedly at the expense of the state. We must also clean up public procurement, Mr. President, because we cannot continue as normal. The status quo is plagued with corruption, particularly at municipal level, and we need stronger mechanisms to prevent corruption in public procurement and get value for money. Now, Mr. President, We need one third area of reform, and you've mentioned this. It is on the master plans. It is not good when government tries to pick winners or losers. So we must move our industrial policy to interventions to those that grow exports and target activities such as investment in infrastructure and innovation rather than try to pick winners or losers. With that formula, Mr. President, there's much in your economic agenda to celebrate, and as the new Deputy Minister of Finance, you have my support. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. I now call upon the Honourable V. Zungula. Honourable Member, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Hlale ngaphambili. Kufuneka namhlanje kungafihlwa amakhuba kuzolinywa, makuthethwe inyani zodwa. Inyani is that the country is in a crisis that is leading the country to be a failed state. At the core of the crisis is how the democratic project of 1994 did not address the systematic racial and economic structure of the country. The economy and wealth of the country is still in the hands of few white families, while the majority of black South Africans do not know where their next meal is coming from. The government can have many interventions, but if they don't address the structural design of the economy, none of those interventions are going to work. We are clear, as the ATM, that the unemployment, the poverty and inequality keep on increasing because we've got an economic system that is only benefiting a selected few. We know many political leaders, as Ikoyo Apa, have been co-opted by the system. They do not represent the aspirations of the poor. They are there to ensure ukuba the system keeps on eating and eating. Those leaders that are here proclaim to be servants of the people, but they are opposing a transformation that is going to benefit the citizens. 30 years into democracy, we must speak the truth, and the truth is that this system is not working, nor is it sustainable. We need a government that will drive fundamental changes to the economy, not cosmetic changes that won't systematically address the challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Land must be returned to its rightful owners. The mineral wealth of the country must belong to the people. And the commanding heights of the economy must reflect the racial demographics of our country. The government must embark on a local production drive to ensure that we produce what we consume and consume what we produce. The government spending must be more than 50% on SMMEs. There is a crisis here of illegal immigration that is a national security risk. Every week, we hear of military-aged men arrested in other countries coming to South Africa. These men are not refugees because there's no refugee that would flee war or persecution anoshiya abantwana nabafazi babo. It is very clear ukuba these men settle in our communities unvetted, and they've taken over the township economy. You, Mr. President, oti uzoba supporta ngayo. It's very clear, Mr. President, ukuba we need to deal with crime. We need to make sure ukuba criminals are the ones that are living in fear, not the other way around. Lastly, as the ATM, we're of the view that this grand coalition has got nothing to offer the people, because it is a partnership of hypocrites who were once opposed to a bloated cabinet. But now that they are being driven around in blue lights, a bloated cabinet is not a problem. Mr. President, your speeches as a head of state are not a public speaking contest. Your faves can applaud you because of your tone, your body language, or whether you said something new. But the most important thing is that for the people of our country, your people are going to judge you harshly in terms of your speeches, because your presidency of the past 6 years has been characterized by the increase in crime, in corruption, in unemployment and poverty.
Honorable Zungula, your time has expired.
Mongameli, wohlulekile, hlala phansi, jula fatsi. Thank you.
The next speaker on the podium is the Honorable Deputy Minister of Social Development. Yeah? Honorable Deputy Minister, I want to know the Honorable Joseph.
Honorable House Chair.
Sorry?
Chairperson of the Women's League, my minister.
Honorable Deputy, can you take a seat so that I can take the intervention of Honorable Joseph? Yeah. On what are you rising, Honorable Joseph?
You are seated wrongly. Come this side. I agree you call orders. You are in a wrong chair. You sit this side, you. Chairman card. Buya ngapha.
Take your seat.
Buya ngapha.
Take your seat.
You are seated in the wrong side. Come this side. Because your job is those things of point of order. Buya ngapha. Ulahlekile.
Honorable Joseph, take your seat. You can only rise on a point of order.
Come
here.
this side.
Take your seat.
Woza. Ulahlekile phela.
Asha, will you please take that mic? Take that mic. All right, Honorable Deputy Minister of Social Development, the platform is yours. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Honorable House Chair, Chairperson of the Women's League, my minister, my Premier from Gauteng who told me to take the lead, Honorable President, you phoned me and we fought about whether I must be a Deputy Minister or a Deputy President. I'm very happy to be a Deputy Minister with such a wonderful minister to support me. The opening address by the President is commendable in that it confirms that government will not back down from its decade-long promises stipulated in the National Development Plan Vision 2030, as the President reiterated that it remains the defining blueprint for our country's growth and development. To reach its target to effectively address inequalities and poverty by 2030 is an ambitious task. I hope that it will be achieved. This informed the priorities we heard last night. The Minister of Agriculture gave it a 99% thumbs up. I gave, you remember, 10 out of 10. Yesterday we celebrated Mandela International Day, also known as 67 Minutes for Madiba, to reaffirm our commitment to human rights and dignity for all in Cape Town as part of its 67 Minutes to Madiba. Al-Jamal launched the renewed campaigns Boycott Genocide, Ban Apartheid Israel. President has, and rightly so, described Nelson Mandela as a global icon for peace, justice and reconciliation. In honor of Mandela's memorable legacy, I appeal to the conscience of the world that we support the Boycott Genocide and a Ban Apartheid Israel campaigns to stop the Zionist state of Israel's genocide of Palestinians. They have not only ignored the ICJ's legal decisions, but the world's voice to stop their pathological acts of ethnic extermination and racial cleansing. As a South African and anti-Zionist, I and millions of South Africans cherish and rejoice our freedom. These expressions of joy all of us desire for our Palestinians too. In fact, all South Africans except those who identify with the Zionist ideology who wish that Palestine gains its liberation in our lifetime. All of us to remember the words of a respected late leader Mandela, who publicly stated, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians." The President further stated that South Africa and the world, millions of people mark Mandela Day with deeds of service and solidarity. And I quote you, Honorable President, "Their actions give life to fundamental truths that we derive our humanity from the humanity of others." Viva Mandela! Viva Palestine! From the river to the sea, Viva Mandela!
The next speaker on the podium is Honorable Mkwena.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to greet the Madam Speaker, Mr. President of South Africa, Deputy President, honorable members, but more than anything, I would like to do a special welcome to my party president, President Zuma. We thank you, President Zuma, that you were able to be confident enough to formulate Umkhonto weSizwe as a party for the people. Mr. President, your State of the Nation address was filled with promises, projections, self-congratulations, and visions and optimistic forecasts. Yet the only thing that was clear yesterday was that the MK, together with the Progressive Charter, will now be the only beacon of hope for the people of South Africa come 2026. If you were in touch with the average South African, you will realize that a bloated cabinet is actually a laughingstock in the face of corruption and great poorness in our country. People can barely put bread on the table. The average person is driving a car they can no longer afford because of the weakening rand. COVID-19 hit our families hard, and while it seems that the government has easily recovered, while it seems that our government has easily recovered, more than 60% of South Africans are listed in the Credit Bureau. And I will remind you that previously, the leader of the DA, Honorable John Steenhuisen, once said the Zuma years were actually much better off. We sit here today listening to stories about South Africa becoming a construction site with yellow machines. Mr. President, our people are actually looking for solutions to reconstruct their very lives. You mentioned economic growth as though it was a given, yet we are waiting for that growth to translate into tangible benefits. Recovery is on the horizon, you say, yet for many of us, horizon is quite distant. The past 2 weeks, we've seen EPWP contracts being cancelled left, right, and center, meaning that the youth is once again faced with the problem of hopelessness and unemployable situation. The gap between rich and poor continues to widen, and economic inequalities persist as a barrier to national unity and progress. The proposed economic policies of the GNU, Mr. President, lack clear implementable strategies. Ubuyiswa nini umhlaba wabantu wantshontsho? Azwanga lutho babu president ngeyinkinga ezibhekene nabantu bamakhosi, amakhosi asiphethe. And as a delegate of the NCOP in the KZN, I was quite intrigued that none of the traditional leaders made it as part of your GNU government. There was also nothing said about the everlasting presence of gender-based violence. And as a woman in South Africa, I'm quite sensitive about...
Will you please take your seat? Seemingly there's an intervention on the other side.
Honorable House Chairperson, if I may rise on a point of order and clarify that the Minister of Public Service Administration, Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi, is a traditional leader. Thank you.
With due respect, Honorable Hlengwa, that was not a point of order. It was a point of debate.
Thank you, Chair. Furthermore, we must address the issue of informal economy closer. Omama bethu abadayisa emgaqweni, nithini ngabo njenge-GNU? Ithini iplan yokubanika amathuba omsebenzi nokuthi babe part and parcel of this economy? Nazo izinto ebesiyilindele kuwena babu president nethuma mina campaign yakho. Abantu bakithi deserve a government that not only acknowledges the challenges, but also delivers concrete and effective solutions. The GNU has left nothing but a vacuum for us. And it is our commitment as Umkhonto weSizwe, together with the Progressive Charter, to ensure that these issues are addressed at every step of the way. And the reason why, Mr. President, Soqhubeka Sithule revolutionary songs is because of our heroes like Chris Hani, or Hector Peterson, or Steve Biko. Abantu abayifela lenkululeko. Lenkululeko namhlanje okudayiswe ngayo. Siyabonga.
The next speaker on the podium is Honorable the Minister of Police, Mr. Mthuli.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to the President of the Republic and the Deputy President and honorable members. I join those who have commended the address by the President last night. Thank you very much, Mr. President. South Africans across the country, including all of us here in this Parliament, feel and believe that crime is on the increase in our country, and it has become highly intolerable. These crimes include murder, they include rape, GBVF, hijackings, and kidnappings. And all of these are on the increase. In addition to this, it is important to observe that most of these crimes are being committed by gangs and organized groupings in several provinces, hence the surge behind this crime, this criminality. So our priority number one is to ensure personal safety, family safety, and safety of the whole communities. In this regard, we believe it is going to be important, firstly, to acknowledge all the efforts to fight crime in the 6th administration, and we will build on those efforts, and we recognize them. Where there are weaknesses shown in the last administration, we'll close those gaps and build from there, and where there are strengths, will build from those strengths. But it is important that we recognize work done in the sixth administration. One of the things that we believe we need to do is to contribute in the enhancement of the security cluster in the country so that we're more coordinated, we're stronger, we're sharper. This includes all formations in the country that are geared to fighting crime. That we come together because it is our enemy number one in where people live. And we need all kinds of weapons and techniques and every other instrument to fight crime to be targeted towards criminals in the country. The safety and protection of women and children are non-negotiable priorities. Quite a number of units in SAPS have been established to deal with this particular issue, including child protection. But further, there are campaigns, awareness campaigns out there. But we've identified a great need to coordinate closer with social development as a sister department so that we can work in tight coordination with the police. Police are trained more to fight crime than to work as social workers, but there are units that are built, but they are not adequate, and therefore we need to coordinate closer with social development. But we also need, we've identified a need to work with the Department of Correctional Services. Quite a number of crimes are increasingly getting coordinated and even committed inside prison cells. And therefore it is important that we meet and we discuss this matter. But thirdly, the phenomenon of so-called repeat rapists needs to be brought to an end. And we need to focus on these people who are rapists, let alone repeat rapists. One of the weaknesses that we are identifying is technology in the SAPS. We are very low on technology. We cannot run behind on horses, in cars, chasing criminals. It's getting more and more impossible. And therefore, we need to enhance technology to this effect. We're going to review our budget so that we push a little bit of money into technology. We will do that. The other area that is important is to strengthen crime intelligence, which we regard as the backbone of driving, of intelligently driving crime fighting in the country by SAPS. The next priority is to deal with crime in partnerships. We are going to be partnering with everybody, us on the one hand, with the concept of building a functional police station, because a number of our police stations are not functional, and we know it's a concern in the community. Unless police stations that are existing and the ones that are going to be built are highly functional, even communities and organizations that want to assist us, want to work with us, it would be impossible. Of course, we need to professionalize SAPS. And in the process of professionalizing them, we need to remove those who are in cahoots with criminals in the country. And communities are very concerned about this. They are pointing at them. They even know them by name, that so-and-so and so-and-so is in cahoots with criminals. And therefore, we are going to work very hard and ensure that these police who are tarnishing the name of otherwise very good policemen and women out there will have to be dealt with. And in conclusion, we need to do what Martin Luther King Jr. said at one point. He said, I quote, "We must combine toughness of the serpent and softness of the dove, a tough mind and a tender heart." And this is what we are going to do. We are going, on one hand, to be very tough, and on the other, where we need to be solved will be solved. And we're starting in the Western Cape tomorrow. We will be meeting stakeholders here with a view to gathering information and things that are worrying them. But that's not the only thing that we're going to do. This is the first step in a program that we are rolling out in the Western Cape to fight crime. And this includes drugs, because the usage of drugs is quite rife and it leads to criminals. And I'm pleased that police are poised to pounce on some criminality in relation to crimes into drugs in Limpopo any minute from now. Now, we will proceed to the Eastern Cape. Ubaba we-UDM lapho bekhala ukuthi ayibafile crime in Gqeberha. That is where we're landing on Sunday morning, to do what will start in the Western Cape and do in the Eastern Cape. And we'll leave no stone unturned in both provinces. And it's not a one-day or a one-week program. It's going to last until we're able to overcome these criminals. We know that there are very few criminals compared to people who are law-abiding, and we'll overcome and defeat them. Thank you very much.
I'm afraid your time is expired. The next speaker on the podium is Honorable Mpiti.
Honorable Speaker, Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable President, Honorable Members, some of history's most important moments occur when political leaders take the risk of rising to seemingly insurmountable challenges because they know that the alternative of not doing so leads to certain disaster. It is in these times that we see who the true builders are of society and who the true breakers of society are. Honorable members, it must never be lost on us that many in our country place their votes in the ballot box in hopes that their struggle will be our #1 agenda in this House. It cannot be business as usual when South Africans are denied the potential of their dreams, when their talents are ignored, when their hopes are destroyed, and when their trust continues to be broken. It is this time that the true builders must stand up and ignore the breakers of society. Honorable Speaker, one of the issues that urgently requires the government's attention is access to adequate housing. Across the length and breadth of South Africa, many people remain destitute and without dignity. The promise of our Constitution under Section 26 remains unfulfilled. We need to urgently focus the attention on fast-tracking and rolling out of title deeds to give people security. In doing so, we give the people the opportunity to leverage property as capital, to enable property owners to pass down formal title to their families, and to improve access to credit, and so much more. We need to focus on fast-tracking of the digitization of the housing list, because with each passing moment, this omission continues to strip the people of South Africa of the dignity that they deserve. There are 2.5 million households on the National Housing Needs Registers as of February 2023. This indicates that the need for housing is urgent and deeply material for South Africans in our country. Housing should be a means of numerous ends, not an end within itself. We do not own or occupy or rent houses merely to do so. Instead, a house provides security, shelter, and supports the good health of families. It is a space for livelihoods, a place from which we grow food or we operate home-based enterprises, and therefore its denial is a denial of a constitutional imperative. The environment and the climate, Mr. President, require the machinery of our government to move much faster than it has. The recent heavy rains across our country have caused chaos and have left many people displaced, as much as 15,000 people who remain without homes as we speak. The expansion of social housing for people who earn between 1,500 and 15,000 per month, particularly individuals who do not qualify for housing bonds and do not qualify for breaking new ground housing, is vitally important. We want to suggest that there should be an increase in rental housing stocks, specifically formulated to address targeted sections of the population for which the demand for rental housing is particularly high. This includes, but not limited to, students, young professionals, single-headed households, and the elderly. It is also important to ensure that we revise the income thresholds annually in line with inflation. We strongly suggest that there is a firm focus on the low spending of provincial and municipal grants, as this is important that people are able to receive the funds that government has set aside. It is deeply unfair and unjust that funds are simply not being spent whilst millions of South Africans remain outside of formal housing in this country. We further ask that government pay attention to blocked projects across our country where projects are entering the third, fourth, and fifth year without completion, which leads to the delay of the dignity for many millions of South Africans in our country. Many of us will leave here today and go back to our homes, but the people that we represent don't have homes to go to. The people of South Africa need us to be builders in this house because there is so much at stake. There's too much on the line. We have to succeed. The breakers believe that when other people succeed, they themselves are somehow diminished. They try to take down everyone else who is trying to build so that they can stand out. In church, they say there are two kinds of people, those that are born again and those that are born against. We know who those individuals are in this house. South Africa has called us to make their struggle the #1 agenda in this house, and the DA will and has answered that call. We repeat to say, hope and help is on the way. Thank you.
Honorable Adams, you are next on the platform. On the platform.
Honorable Speaker, House Chair, Mr. President, Honorable Deputy President, honorable members. House Chair, I just need to put it on the record that I find it deplorable that this House cannot recognize a former president of this country, but it was willing to recognize an apartheid president in F.W. de Klerk. If former President Jacob Zuma is still here, welcome, sir. House Chair, I want to ask that you listen. You might just learn something. You know, Mr. President, I listened to your speech last night, and it wasn't a terrible speech. But I've heard 6 of them before, and the outcome has always been the same. Another year of nothingness. Mr. President, as I speak to you now, it is raining in Cape Town and it is raining bullets on the Cape Flats, and no plan has been put forward to save the long-suffering colored child. Mr. President, I'm going to say to you today that when you were speaking last night, the cheer from the right wing was so loud, I could have sworn Verwoerd was standing in the front here. But, Mr. President, listen when I tell you, Graça Machel says, the day my oppressor applauds me, know that I've betrayed you. Mr. President, the NCC is here to ask a question. Has Solomon Mahlangu been betrayed by you and what purports to be an ANC? Has the memory of Ashley Creel been betrayed by you and what purports to be an ANC? Mr. President, the ANC is no more. Mr. President, it is interesting to hear the white supremacists raise the issue of VBS as if Phala Phala never happened. It is interesting, Mr. President, that Phala Phala is being swept under the rug by the same people who brought it up. Mr. President, the NCC has the national question. It is not the colored question. Was Pala Pala's money the deposit for the sale of the poor's rights in South Africa? Minister Mackenzie, my brother, my bro, you have lauded the president for bringing the colored question. Why has it taken this man 6 years? Why are our people still dying? Mr. President, your fine speech, it offers no warmth to those feeling cold today. Your fine speech, it does not put away the pains of hunger suffered by millions of our people, induced by the Democratic Alliance and their predecessor, the National Party. To the government of national unity, let me give you a message. We shall overcome. In spite of what you do, we shall overcome. Thank you.
The next speaker on the podium. The next speaker on the podium is Honorable Boshoff.
Honourable President, honourable members and fellow South Africans, I greet you. Agbare President, ek staan vandag voor u as 'n trotse lid van die nuut gestigte regering van nasionale eenheid. Hierdie regering verteenwoordig 'n betekenisvolle draaipunt in die Suid-Afrikaanse geskiedenis. Dit is getuienis van ons kollektiewe toewyding tot eenheid, versoening en vooruitgang van ons demokratiese bestel. Soos almal bewus is daar nie 'n verkiesingsuitslag gewees in die onlangse verkiesing nie en geen party het die meerderheid gekry nie. Dit is 'n klinkklare bewys dat Suid-Afrikaners oor die spektrum heen 'n regering begeer wat samewerking en verantwoordelikheid omhels. Dit is dus ons plig, agbare President, om te verseker dat die parlement en sy uiterste doen om die vaardigheid van elke Suid-Afrikaner te bevorder. Honourable President, the formation of this government is entrusted to us by voters to deepen our nation's commitment to the principles that underpin our democracy, to advance human dignity, equality, and freedom of every South African. It speaks to the strength of the Constitution's guarantees, which include inclusivity, accountability, and transparency. We, as representatives of different political parties, are united by one common goal: to serve the people of South Africa. Our allegiance is to the nation, transcending party lines and ideological divides. Een van die primêre doelwitte van die RNE is om toe te sien dat dringende ekonomiese uitdagings aangespreek word, om sodoende te verseker dat werkloosheid, armoede en ongelykhede uitgewis word. The energy crisis, high incidence of crime, and failures in basic delivery are the enemies of economic growth. And it is to these issues that the government of national unity should look first, by taking concrete steps to reduce the cost of living, stimulate the growth of SMMEs, and attract much-needed investment. We can build a prosperous society for all South Africans. Deur ons hulpbronne en kundigheid saam te voeg, streef ons daarna om beleide te implementeer wat ekonomiese groei sal stimuleer, belegging sal lok en wat sal lei tot die skepping van broodnodige werksgeleenthede. Deur 'n kollektiewe poging moet daartoe gesien word dat 'n veerkragtige ekonomie gebou word wat alle Suid-Afrikaners sal bevoordeel, veral die mees kwesbare in ons samelewing. En derhalwe, agbare President, verwelkom die DA U progressiewe aankondiging gisterand dat daar van ons beleide opgeneem is in u lys van prioriteite. Dit is 'n duidelike aanduiding dat ons beroep vir 'n program gebaseer op vinnige groeiende ekonomie en werkskepping aangehoor is. No, President, together as the GNU, we must implement it. In closing, to every South African out there, we stand here today, not as members of different parties, but as united representatives of South African people. You have entrusted this Parliament with the extraordinary responsibility of ensuring that whatever it does to ensure a better life for all. And I'm sure that my colleagues will agree with me when I say that we intend to do just that. Together, we will strive to fulfill the promises of our vibrant democracy, ensuring that South Africa remains a beacon of hope, unity, and progress. Agbare President en Suid-Afrikaners daar buite, die DA het 'n verkiesingsbelofte aan die kiesers gemaak om ons wonderlike land te led. En daarom sê ons onomwonde, die RNE is u regering, nie ons sinne nie. Saam sal ons dit maak werk. Ons gaan dit laat maak werk. En ons nooi u uit om saam met ons hierdie pad te stap na 'n beter toekoms. Ek dank u.
Honorable the Minister of Rural Development.
Honorable Chair, Honorable President, and Honorable Deputy President. The opening of Parliament speech is a cement plastered on the new paradigm that has emerged out of the 29th May 2024 general elections, wherein the voters publicly, collectively expressed their wishes and aspirations to press the button and reset the governance of their beloved country. The outcomes of the elections gave a mandate to the 18 political parties to make the 5-year period between 2024 and 2029 a driving force for the change and transformation. The PAC understands the voice of a people-powered democracy. We have dutifully responded to the people whom we have declared to serve with our hearts and minds in what Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe described as an undying love of the African people. We are ideologically clear about the unity of the opposites, the negation of the negation, and the eventually transformation of quantity into quality. The citizens of a country are decisive. We have heard them and will act on their behalf, doing what they are calling for. We are guided by the idea of establishing African nationhood, as understood by Kwame Nkrumah, Kwame Ture, Zafania Mutupeng, A.P. Mda, and others in that League of Patriots and struggle heroes. The opening of Parliament speech is focused on what needs to be addressed and attended urgently. The influence of the GNU is most certainly reflected in the speech. We are particularly agreed with the focus to highlight the land reform and rural development. We are committed to spatial justice and equitable land use with more resolve, with more resources, and with more emphasis. We are intent on implementing deliverables that are aimed at relieving the people from systematic injustice on access to land and the right to improve their quality of life. We are, President, committed to improve the quality of lives of our society through building sustainable rural infrastructure to curb urban-rural migration. We will build rural enterprises that are based on area-specific comparative advantages. We are spiritually connected to land, and PAC long-standing slogan remains, land first and all shall follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable Minister of Rural Development. The next speaker on the podium is Honorable Maimela. The floor is yours, sir.
Honorable Speaker, Chairperson, Your Excellency the President and the Deputy President, honorable members, as we welcome the opening of Parliament address, we take a reflection, honorable members and President, on the background of the state of basic education in our country. On the 26th of June, 1955, South Africans striving for the liberation of their country from the yoke of apartheid gathered in Kliptown to adopt the historic Freedom Charter, which outlined the country we desired to live in and forms the basis of the ANC policy today. That festival of the oppressed and justice-loving people of South Africa unequivocally pronounced that the doors of learning and culture shall be open to all who live in the country, which was an affirmation of the demand on education Africans had made in 1943 through the ANC's African Claims document. Acutely aware of the reality that education is not class neutral, nor is it free from the chains of the dominant ideology of an epoch. The Freedom Charter articulated the education required to take South Africa forward by making the point that the aim of education, amongst others, shall be to teach the youth to love their people and their culture, to honor human brotherhood, liberty, and peace. This point was succinctly put by Comrade Zwelakhe Sisulu when he explained the concept of People's Education for People's Power to the National Education Crisis Committee in 1986, when he said, and I quote, "We are no longer demanding the same education as whites. Since this is an education for domination, people's education means education at the service of the people as a whole. Education that liberates, education that puts the people in command of their lives." Since the 1994 democratic breakthrough, ANC government has been implementing different interventions to achieve people's education for people's power, which is an antithesis to apartheid education philosophy. The investment in education the ANC government has made since 1994 and through the passing of the seminal 1997 South African Schools Act and the 2024 Bila Bill produce an education system which seeks to redefine the place of Africans in South Africa. We have transformed the education curriculum to advance human rights for all and the objectives envisaged in the Atlantic Charter, the Freedom Charter, which was consolidated after the democratic breakthrough in our Constitution. In the past 30 years, we have made strides to close the inequality gap between what was